King's assassination, you and I must call it an assassination, because it was an assassination. Involved in it were police in the local city of Memphis, also CIA, also FBI, also military intelligence. And I've heard it said, though I've not found the connections yet, that there were people in high office in Washington, D.C. who ordered the killing of Martin King. I'm saying that to indicate to you that for many folk in the United States, Martin King was an enemy. This is what J. Edgar Hoover said about him. Other people called him a communist, a radical extremist, and all of that kind of nonsense. But he was a wonderful friend, a wonderful human being, one of the finest men I have ever met, and with whom I've ever had the experience to sing together at the piano, play football with on the playing field in our retreats and meetings. Terrific man who did an extraordinary thing. He grew up never missing a meal. He grew up having the financial resources through his family to go to school, to work straight through to do a PhD at Boston University. But he committed himself to seeing that our nation, he said, he committed himself to redeeming the soul of this nation. That was the motto. And that's what the movement of the 1950s and 60s helped to do. We were for every person. We were for the end of discrimination of any kind. We were for the empowerment of labor. We were especially for the empowerment of workers making poverty wages in our country. We knew that day had ended. To me, it remains a shame that the wealthiest nation that human history knows anything about would dare to cry poverty and pretend that every man and every woman and every young person who's working does not deserve fair, just wages, enough wages to support themselves, to support their families, and to support their own future, and to support and change the environment in which they live. Nothing less than that is adequate for any of us, or for any person. What I urge us to do in talking April the 4th, 2011, is to tell the powers that be in our nation that we're not going to listen to the propaganda that seeks to keep us divided from one another. We're not going to allow what someone has called here this evening class war, but I say it's something worse than that. It is an example of the powerful and the wealthy wanting to dominate 310 million people in this country, and to do it, they must somehow keep us from joining hands across gender, color, complexity, class, religion, and every other kind of division, and demand together that we are one people, as already said this evening, and we want justice, equality, liberty, access for all of the people of our land. When are we going to stop electing? And I want to say this very gently, but I don't want anyone to take offense at what I say. But when are we going to stop electing white men to office who refuse to do right by all of us? are we going to stop believing the Republican Party when they run a campaign in the year 2010 talking about jobs and then go to Congress and the first bill they support is an anti-abortion bill? When are we going to stop that nonsense? We must serve notice. We must serve notice on our elected officials that we want them to stand for the same thing that we stand for. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all are created equal, that all are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights and liberties are life, liberty, and happiness. We need to serve notice that we will settle for nothing less. Then, sisters and brothers, what we must do is organize, we must mobilize, we must train ourselves, we must discipline ourselves, we must walk, we must talk, we must march, we must go into the jails of Los Angeles or Madison, Wisconsin. We must prepare to unite as we've never before been united. We must engender a power that will cause the principalities and powers of our nation that stumble and fall to resurrect in their stead truth, new institutions that will make our land, our city, our state what all of us want it to be. And so it gives me great pleasure to be on this platform with William Lucy. Bill Lucy, you know, was a part of the generation of unions who insisted that the union must be a fighter for the rights of the people, who insisted all across his life that in fact the union must be a community union, engaged in the life of the whole community and concerned for the welfare of all the people. One of the things that I will ever always relish from ASCME and its leadership in 1968 in Memphis is this, that those 1,300 workers had not yet been recognized as a union. They had no treasury. They were poor men. I learned so much from them and their families, and so much from their wives. I wish that some of the wives that I met in 1968 could be the treasurers of California and D.C. and they would do a far better job of being a treasurer than what we have today so frequently. I thought it then, I think it now. But what I loved so much about Bill Lucy and the others who came from ASCME was the fact that even though it was February and winter and rainy and cold, even though garbage workers are not supposed to strike in the winter, they're supposed to strike in July. Even though they had no treasury, even though they hadn't consulted the International February the 12th. The International Union, Bill Worth, Bill Lucy, Jerry Worth, and others came in and put their arms around Memphis, and put their arms around those 1,300 workers, and put their arms around me and others of us who were trying to feed families and all the rest of it. And we made it as a community, both as a civil rights movement, as a strike, as a union enterprise, as an effort that would lift the spirit not only of the folk of Memphis, but help to unite this nation in doing that which is right. Bill Lucy remains a stalwart statesman for unionism and for labor, and a man we can continue to follow and trust to help us in this 21st century do the work that we have to do. Let the enemies of truth and justice be born. Bill Lucy is alive and well.